Good day, folks. This is Greg Judy at Green Pastures Farm. Today I'm in Canada at the Edmonton Soil and Grazing Conference, and my special guest today is Shorty Fensky. Did I pronounce that right?
You got her.
Okay. Well, Shorty, I heard some of your story. You were a speaker yesterday on the producer panel, and I want you to tell folks a little bit about your journey, where you came from, and what made you change.
Yeah. Our journey started, our regenerative journey started back in 2015 when I attended the first Edmonton Soil Health and Grazing Conference, and I met Emilia Zavalov, and her presentation, What is Soil Health, really opened my eyes on what was going wrong with our soil. We were pouring the groceries to our grain crops, and we got these huge swaths that didn't translate into the grain tank. And we realized that something was wrong, but every time you go to the input company, they say, well, more nitrogen, basically more groceries. Well, we did that. We were putting on upwards of 750 pounds of groceries, and it damn near bankrupted us.
My gosh.
So we knew our soils were broken now, but nobody was giving us answers on how to fix things. And when I came to this conference in 2015, my gosh, all the speakers were giving answers. They weren't trying to sell me Band-Aids. So I think that was the start of our learning journey. And unfortunately, I got a lot of compaction between the ears, so it took me a while to learn. But that learning journey was so important, because once you learn about these practices and figure out how you can implement them on your operation, then you'll truly be successful. Because if you just jump in both feet, and then you'll make a lot of mistakes. But if you're calculated, you'll do well. So we started implementing regenerative practices in 2018, and my goodness, things started to respond, but we still were lacking our real goal of what we were trying to achieve. And so we were kind of like a ship without a destination. We were doing stuff, we're like, yeah, this is working.
Yep.
But really weren't seeing the results that we were supposed to be seeing. So again, Emilia said, you need to benchmark your soils. That's when we finally got down to the root of the problem, and we had a severe compaction issue. And no, it wasn't just between the ears, it was also in the soil. So that's pretty much the journey in a nutshell. We started learning about, okay, how do we fix this compaction issue? And as you can tell by my hat, I do not like to use iron, so it's
Roots.
It's a hashtag roots not iron. It comes from Blake Vince, a good friend of mine from Southern Ontario. I call him one of the rock star soil guys that I know.
What's his name?
Blake Vince, awesome guy.
I know Blake.
I know he's speaking at the No-Till conference
on the Plains.
Yeah.
Blake's awesome.
I met Blake at the No-Till on the Plains.
That's where I met him.
In 2019.
Yep. I asked him if he's going to be at this conference, and he said it's too far or something like that.
Oh, we'll have to give him a hard time about that.
He's an awesome guy, really is.
But well, that's not true. I did hear him speak at the 2015 conference, but I didn't build up enough confidence to actually go up and meet him. So it's because of the roots not iron. We believe plants are going to do this. If in nature she has a problem, does she go up to John Deere and say, hey, I need so many thousand chisel plows to fix my compaction issue? No, she uses plants. So if it works for nature, it'll work in my field. So I just have to actually observe nature and see what she's doing, choose the right plants that she's using, or at least their tame cousins, as Rick Bieber would say, and then plant those. But again, it's all about understanding and observing your system and trying to work within it instead of against it.
Yep. Well, you mentioned last night the final answer somebody asked you, and it really struck a chord with me. Shorty, what was the defining moment that made you realize you needed to do something different than what you were doing?
And Admittedly, it's not easy to admit that you've hit rock bottom, but we were literally hours away from foreclosure. And it is not easy to be in that situation. And I wish my greatest enemy never to be through that situation, because it's horrible.
It's awful.
Now, having said that, it was the best thing that ever happened to us. And I know people are saying, oh, that's not right. How could bankruptcy or foreclosure be the best thing that ever happened to us? It refocused us. We hit rock bottom. You can't go any lower, so you've got nowhere else to go but up. And believe me, we used that like a slingshot, like you've never seen.
Yeah. Well, I just looking at some of the slides that you put up there yesterday, and I mean, you've accelerated this thing. I mean, you're on the leading, cutting edge of a lot of different things. This composter that you're using now, I mean, you're doing a lot of biologicals on your farm. Can you cover that just a little bit?
Yes, the Johnson Sioux bioreactor is a godsend, and eventually I will get to meet David Johnson. I actually, that's one of my biggest regrets from the No-Till on the Plains 2019 conference, is I did not attend his session. Bad me. Anyway, but that Johnson Sioux bioreactor is something else. We built the first one in August of 2020, and we followed a similar design. We used IBC cages and mounted it to a pallet instead of using I think he uses concrete forms, and his is round, so ours is square.
Yep.
I still followed all of his principles, making sure that everything isn't more than 12 inches away from fresh air, and making sure that it always stayed wet, never froze. The bad thing was every time you had to bring that inside, because my goodness, it freezes here in Alberta. And so every time I brought it inside, it just made a mess everywhere. So if you're lucky enough to live in a climate where, yes, it might freeze a little bit or for a short period of time, yeah, you can get away with leaving it outside. Here we are in an ice box for 3-4 months, easy.
Yep.
So I had to adapt it to our area. So again, I used what I had laying around. Again, use what you got.
Yep.
Especially when you're broke. And we had IBC totes kicking around. Just this time I left the bladder in so that I could contain the liquid. But the problem was you would have had an anaerobic layer on the bottom if you just filled it up and still put your pipes in there. So I came up with putting a false floor in. So now the leachate can always drain away, and then you also got oxygenation coming up from the bottom.
Right.
Now, some people I'm sure are gonna say, well, the sides are solid. You're not gonna get the oxygenation you need. I get that. But if you leave the edges just a little bit drier, they pull away from the sides. And I wish I had one here so I could show you.
Yep.
But when the side actually goes a little bit clearer, that's the sides pulling away. And yes, I know it should never get below that 70% moisture. But in this scenario, it's okay, because the worms in there, they will still do their jobs. And the last bioreactors that I built, that is some of the most beautiful compost I've ever seen. I've sent it to Yamili for testing, and she can't believe it when she looks under the microscope. I can look under the microscope too, because I did Elaine Ingham's courses as well. But she's just much better at it. But now I can use that high quality compost, and I made sure to stress this in my talk yesterday. When you're making this, the more plant species, the better the compost will ever be.
Yeah.
So when I made those ones, I took garden trimmings and slough grass and alfalfa hay, and basically anything that was a carbon source I put in there. And when I put it in there, before I put it in there, I actually used our TMR. We've got a small vertical mixer, so I put all the materials into the TMR and I just chewed it up.
Yep.
So it mixed really well. It's a nice consistency, and then you use that to load the bioreactor. And then and I know some people are saying, well, it has to be wetted. Well, you've got a bladder here, close the valve at the bottom, fill it up with water, and let it sit. Now, depending on the type of material that you've got in there, you can let it sit for as little as a half an hour. Or if you've got some really spongy material like bulrush, you might have to let it sit for 3-4 hours. But don't let that water sit in there for longer than that, because again, it's going to go anaerobic. We do not want that. So once that liquid has served its purpose, you drain it out and you let the thing do its job.
Yep.
Normally it heats up to, all of mine have heated up right away to 150 degrees within 2 days, easy. Some of them are within hours.
Mm-hmm.
And it just makes this beautiful compost. You just wait for the temperature to come down, you put the worms in and let them do their thing.
Yeah.
Like you said in your presentation today, they make lots of friends.
They do. They certainly do.
So,
well, on the way over here, you briefly mentioned that you had to go grind flour, and that intrigued me because you said the flour that you're grinding, it's not normal flour because of the way you raise the plant.
yes.
So you've got, is this canola or barley or wheat that you're grinding?
We're grinding a hard red spring wheat, and every time somebody hears about this flour, they think, oh my gosh, it must be a special variety or an ancient variety.
Because it doesn't cause people that have celiac
Or they have a gluten intolerance.
gluten intolerance.
Yes.
They can eat your bread, so you're
But
saying.
they can eat our flour. And I'm not sure who coined the phrase, but by golly, I love it. It's not the cow, it's the how. So it's not the variety, but how it's grown. And because we're trying to grow our cash crops biologically using the compost extract as the major
Driver, yep.
Well, the driver of the system.
Yep.
And instead of using synthetics in order to basically spoon feed the plant, now this plant is growing a wheat that our bodies, our guts can recognize as being actual food. And people who have tried it, they're like, my gosh, my eczema has gone away because of this. I don't get as much joint pain because, and I'm just blown away by the testimonials that we're getting because of this.
That's unreal.
And
So that's real food you're growing there.
exactly. And it's,
How much do you think of our health problems that we see every day is related back to the food that we're eating?
100%.
100%.
All of them. Every single one.
And this can all be solved with healthy soil.
Healthy soil is the absolute driving force behind all of human health.
Shorty, would you expand a little bit on what you talked about today, the purpose of the ruminant animal out on the landscape, especially a dry environment? We got to have those animals.
Absolutely. And those ruminant animals are an incredible bioreactor. They're a walking bioreactor. In an arid environment, it's very moist, and the litter will actually fall down to the ground, and the soil biology is able to cycle the nutrients quite frequently. They've got the moisture to do it. In a semi-arid and an arid environment, the moisture isn't there. It might be there in some parts of the time, but it's not consistent like it is in an arid environment. So the ruminant fills that gap because he comes along and he eats that plant material and cycles those nutrients through, which the soil biology don't have the capacity to do because of lack of water. So you won't find a ruminant in an arid environment. You will find one in a semi-arid environment. You'll find them in the arid environment. I had no idea that an elephant was a ruminant, but my good friend Steve Kenyon in one of his presentations informed me, and when I thought about it some more, I'm like, makes sense.
Yep.
He's there for a reason. My goodness, is nature incredibly smart.
Yes.
She's got it figured out.
We just need to learn to manage in sync with nature instead of beating the heck out of her.
Exactly. I really wish more people would take that to heart. And believe me, once you start working with nature instead of against her, it's so much easier.
Yeah.
And yes, I agree, there will always be stumbling blocks, but take it as it is. My goodness, turn your obstacles into opportunities.
Absolutely. Shorty, I'm going to kind of wound this up, but for people that want to find out more about what you're doing, you've got a grazing group or something that you mentioned?
Yeah.
What is that?
It's actually a WhatsApp group.
Okay.
And it all started when we went to a composting workshop and at Derek Axe's place in southern Saskatchewan. And Christine Jones was also doing a seminar. Wonderful event. And on the way back, actually on the way there, I picked up Yana and Fred on the side of the road, and we jumped in the Jeep and we drove for 9 hours, so you become fast friends.
Right.
Now, when the trip was coming to an end, we said, you don't want the conversation to stop, but this is such a great topic. Soil health is so intriguing. My goodness, we have to keep it going, but we need more people.
Yep.
So we put out the call to the people that we knew, asked them, hey, can you join our WhatsApp group? And we've never looked back. We've got approximately 80 members, and a lot of people are still waiting to join. And
How do you join that?
you actually need to contact me directly, or
Which is Shorty Fensky. If somebody Googles you, will they get your contact information?
actually no, they probably won't, because I try and stay off the web as much as I can.
How do they get a hold of you?
Well, they can always email me at sfensky@hotmail.com. So it's pretty easy. I'm not that creative.
Shortyfensky.com.
No, sfensky@hotmail.com is my email address.
Just S.
Just S.
Fensky.
@hotmail.com.
Perfect.
And that's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me. And then most people just want to just be added.
Yep.
But I don't think that's enough.
Yeah.
In my opinion, they have to contact me to show the actual desire and interest that they want to be
Right.
a part of this group. And so far, we have approximately 80 members in our group across 4 provinces, into the United States, and now into Australia as well. So all we do is talk about soil health, and it's incredible how all of us are learning from each other.
Yep.
And it's helping all of us accelerate our learning so that we can fix our soil quicker.
That's awesome. I just want to thank you, Shorty, for your story and telling us about your journey, what you're going through, the exciting things that you're doing on your farm. I can feel your passion, and you ought to be proud of what you've accomplished.
Oh my goodness!
And my goodness, there's so much more you don't know. We all don't know, you know.
I like to say a wise man knows nothing, because now you always have to keep learning.
There you go. There you go. I love it.
And I
love
must say it was an absolute pleasure and a joy to meet you as well.
Well, thank you, Shorty. Folks, I'm going to wind this up for those you all new. If you would, hit that subscribe button on the way out, and we'll see you down the road.